It's 12:30, so let's get started. Hope everybody had a relatively relaxing break. Back in it for the last couple weeks. So, as a reminder, tonight we have due quiz 10, if you haven't done it already. And if you're choosing to submit a rough draft, which you do not have to, but if you are, that is due by tonight as well. I will get feedback to everyone on either their project or their rough draft this week. And then, of course, your final draft of your project is already due next Friday. So, lucky you. So, yeah, and then in terms of other quizzes, this week on Thursday, quiz 11 is due. And then we can talk either at the end of class today or on Thursday about quiz 12. But for now, let's get started on chapter 14. So, chapter 14. So this chapter is sort of the transitional chapter. We're starting to move past all of the basic concepts we've learned in the beginning of the course, and now we're going to be talking all about glucose metabolism. So if you filled up this weekend on mashed potatoes and pie and stuff, now you can learn what happened to all those carbs. That's what we're going to be talking about the rest of the semester. So that being said, with chapter 14, you're not going to have a particular quiz about chapter 14 in particular. It's just there to sort of lead us into what we're going to be discussing in chapters 15 through 18. So we do have some review questions for chapter 14, just to sort of get us started to thinking about metabolism. So let's start off by thinking about what nutrients people require. So, first of all, are humans autotrophs or heterotrophs? Yeah, we are heterotrophs. And why is that? Where do we get our energy from? Yeah, organic molecules, exactly. So we don't do like photosynthesis, we need to eat food. So we need to take in organic molecules to get our energy from them. And in terms of the air we breathe, are we obligate aerobes, facultative aerobes, or anaerobes? Yeah, we are obligate aerobes. Yeah, so what do we require in our air? Oxygen, yeah, very important. You would not live very long if we did not have oxygen. And we'll talk about why that is in the upcoming chapters when we talk more about cellular respiration and oxidative phosphorylation. So what are the other classes of nutrients that we need? Yeah. Yeah, so those are all nutrients that are part of one of the classes, so that's macronutrients. So they're called macronutrients because we need a lot of them. And so this includes, like you said, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids. Did you say anything else? Or was that the big three you mentioned? Yeah. Are there any other macronutrients that we need, something we need to take in a lot of? Water. Yeah, very important. Lots of water. Okay. So what is the other class that is not macronutrients? Logically, if it's not macro, it's yeah, it's micronutrients. Yeah. So they're called micronutrients because we just need small amounts of them. So what kinds of things are included in micronutrients? Yeah. Yeah, vitamins and minerals. So between macronutrients and micronutrients, which one is the main source of energy? Yeah, macronutrients. Yeah, we break a lot of those down. We oxidize them. We'll talk about that to derive energy from them. And why do we need vitamins and minerals if we're not using them as a source of energy? Go for it. Yeah, how do they help? Can you be more specific, or can anyone be more specific? Yeah. Or like, what are they doing to help? It doesn't have to be like a specific vitamin, but like, what are they helping with? So, I mean, maybe like vitamin D does, but like on the whole, like vitamins and minerals, so they are mostly going to be like cofactors in enzymes or like prosthetic groups. So they're going to help enzymes catalyze reactions. A lot of times they're required to help the enzyme catalyze the reaction, so they're very important. Yeah. Any questions about nutrients overall? Okay. So let's talk about ATP. So we've talked about deriving energy from our nutrients. One way that we get energy from nutrients is we use them to make ATP. So why do we think of ATP as the source of energy? It has these phosphoanhydride bonds that we call them high energy. Why? Why are they high energy? What makes them high energy? Yeah. Yeah, so they're like they're repelling each other, right? Yeah. So one. What else does breaking that bond help with? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's another one. What about another one? Yeah. Yeah. So having higher salvation energy is telling us that the products are able to interact more with their solvent, which in this case is water. They're in an aqueous environment. So when you break apart one bigger molecule into two smaller molecules, you'll increase the overall surface area in the products compared to the reactants, meaning that there's more surface area available for interactions with water, which is overall stabilizing because these molecules are so highly polar and charged. So overall, we can say that the products of ATP hydrolysis are more stable than ATP itself. And that describes all three of these things. So if the hydrolysis of ATP is so favorable, and it releases all this energy, why doesn't ATP just break apart by itself? How do we actually use ATP to couple with other reactions to help them become more spontaneous? How do we harness ATP's energy? Anybody? Okay, so even though there's a really strongly negative delta G for ATP hydrolysis, there's still a very high activation energy that has to be overcome to go through hydrolysis. So if you think of, your energy diagram, your reactant is here, or let me draw a bigger one. So if ATP is here, hydrolyzed ADP plus phosphate is here, there's still an activation energy that has to be overcome. So even though the products are more stable, it still needs help. So it's not just going to hydrolyze on its own. So that's why we refer to ATP as kinetically stable. So, any questions about that? All right, so let's keep going. So let's start thinking about anabolism versus catabolism, anabolic versus catabolic pathways. So can anybody tell me some of the differences between anabolic and catabolic pathways? Yeah. Yes. Very important. Anabolic is building up. Catabolic is breaking down. Yeah.
Anabolic requires energy. Catabolic releases energy.
Yeah, perfect. So anabolic requires energy. Catabolic releases energy. Any other major differences? So we are going to be talking a lot about redox type reactions, oxidation and reduction. So can somebody tell me which one of these is oxidative or reductive? Your choice. Yeah. Yeah, anabolic pathways are reductive. And so when we are reducing nutrients, as we build them up, during the course of these redox reactions, while we reduce down the nutrients that we're building, we're going to be oxidizing our electron carriers. So if anabolic pathways are reductive, what are catabolic pathways going to be? Yeah.
Oxidative?
They're oxidative, yeah. So we're going to be oxidizing all those carbons that are in our nutrients that we're breaking down. So what does that mean for the electron carriers? They're getting reduced. Yep. Can anybody give me an example of either an anabolic or a catabolic pathway? Yeah. Yeah. So, example, breaking down glucose. And what is that process called of breaking down glucose? Glycolysis, yeah. Any other examples of either one? Yeah. Yeah. So synthesizing nucleic acids, proteins. Not my neatest handwriting. Any examples, since we're going to be talking a lot about carbohydrate metabolism, can you think of any examples in terms of carbs where we're building up things? Yeah. Gluconeogenesis, that's great. Yeah. So that's building up and breaking down glucose itself. We also have a storage molecule for glucose, glycogen. So are there processes involved in glycogen that are anabolic or catabolic? Not a trick question. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So glycogen breakdown is also called glycogenolysis. It's a little bit of a mouthful. You can just call it glycogen breakdown. It's fine. All right. Anything to add about anabolic versus catabolic pathways, or any questions so far? Okay. So let's talk now about those electron carriers, our redox cofactors. So we were just talking about how during catabolism our nutrients are getting oxidized, but our electron carriers are getting reduced, and it's the opposite for anabolism. So now we're going to focus in on our redox cofactors, those electron carriers. So can anybody tell me the three, or any one of the three common redox cofactors and what they would be in their oxidized versus reduced state? Yeah. Yeah, is that oxidized or reduced? Yeah, so NADH is reduced. What is the oxidized form of NADH? Yeah, NAD+. How about another one? Yeah. Yes. Which one is oxidized? Yeah, so we have FAD oxidized and FADH2 is reduced. One other one, yeah. So NADP plus and NADPH. Yeah, you got all the letters. Just make sure they're in the right order. Yeah. Yeah. So in the next few chapters, we're mostly going to be talking about the first two, NAD plus and FAD plus their reduced forms. NADP plus and NADPH are also very important, but less so for the carbohydrate metabolism that we will be discussing in this course. But if you go on to learn more biochem or metabolism, they will appear. So yeah, and if anyone gets confused about what's oxidized versus reduced, or why is it reduced when we have an extra hydrogen there, so every time you're gaining electrons, the electrons you gain tend to be associated with a proton, so which makes one hydrogen molecule, or one hydrogen atom. So in the case of all of these, every time they gain an electron, they're also gaining a proton. So that's why in their reduced state, they have the hydrogen there, if that helps you remember, because reducing is adding electrons. Any questions about those? All right. So we have an equation where we have ethanol and NAD plus getting converted to acetaldehyde and NADH. So in this equation, which species is the oxidizing agent? Yeah, NAD plus. How do you know that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the oxidizing agent itself gets reduced while the other item is getting oxidized. So we have ethanol is getting oxidized to acetaldehyde with the help of NAD+. That's why it's the oxidizing agent. So if you're not sure if what's happening to ethanol as it goes into acetaldehyde, so we have acetaldehyde looks like this. Maybe it's a little bit more clearer to see that the hydroxyl group on the ethanol is getting oxidized into an aldehyde, into a carbonyl group. And so if ethanol is getting oxidized, NAD plus is getting reduced. NAD plus is helping ethanol become oxidized. So is this reaction anabolic or catabolic? Yeah, how do you know that? Yeah, I mean, we talked about how overall catabolic reactions are oxidizing reactions. So in this case, ethanol is being oxidized. So it's being essentially catabolized. I can't spell or type, talk at the same time. So this is catabolic because our fuel, which is the ethanol, is getting oxidized and our electron carrier is getting reduced. This is characteristic of what you see during catabolism. All right. Any questions about that?
So when deciding catabolic versus catabolic, you don't look at your electron carrier. You look at overall electron.
Yeah, I mean, you can think about it either way. If it's, I mean, I think a lot of times it's easier to look at the electron carrier. So if the electron carrier is getting reduced, it's catabolic. But in a more like basic sense, the catabolism is referring to the fuel and not the electron carrier. But yes, you could look at either if you're just trying to figure out which is which. But if I ask, is catabolism an oxidative or reductive process? Catabolism itself is oxidative because the fuel is getting oxidized. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. So that is chapter 14. So now we can move on to chapter 15.